Welcome to The Capitalist Investor. Today we are going to talk about retirement spending and how you could actually be underspending in retirement. I said it right. You could enjoy retirement more. You could actually get that pass to spend more money. So, all right, today we're going to talk about spending in retirement. And it's actually, so I've been trying to tell a lot of clients this over the last several years because, basically ever since COVID, the market has been fantastic. Yep. I mean, I know we could have another show on why you should retire now, right? There's ways to lock in these losses, or not, not the losses, but the gains, and ride this thing out. So because the accounts have all just been melting up.
Yep.
And we have been talking for years about, having a financial plan, knowing what you can and can't do, and what we are starting to find, and it's actually mass people that we talk to, work with, whatever it may be, where they don't know how much money they really have, because, and it's not because they don't know, it's because here's the pedigree of a successful client from the many years I've been doing this. Saving. They don't know how to spend.
Yep.
So they just save. And then when I magically come around the corner and say, hey, Joe and Mary, guess what? You can spend more money. They look at me like I got three eyeballs and they just freeze up.
Yep.
And then and then I'm, meet with them in the next quarter, maybe the next year when we rebuild their plan, be like, hey, your plan's even better. Did you start spending more money? And they're like, no. So, we build that one part in the financial plan called the max spend, especially if your plan is, very successful, right? We kind of shoot for an 80% Monte Carlo. That means 8 out of 10 times you're not going to run out of money by the time age 95 is typically when we build plans. And again, the reason they don't spend money, but what I'm finding is, honestly, I had a case about a year or two ago. The clients are approaching 80, and they're looking around saying, we have all this money. How do we spend it? Why didn't you tell us? And we have been for almost 10 years,
right.
But it doesn't sink in. It just, and I'm not going to force you. You can't force them to spend money, but it's I can only tell you so many times and show you so many Monte Carlo analysis and say, hey, actually we have some of the best software in the planning industry. It's legit. We got really smart people building the plan. We built the plan conservative. We have you living in 95. We toned down rates of return inside the plan. Our investments have been pacing the returns in the plan. So these are the things that I battle with clients, and it's don't get me wrong, this is not a bad problem to have. It's just you should enjoy it more because you built it up, and now's the time if you're in that category.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we have to give AI a little bit of credit. Honestly, I never would have thought about this topic ever in a million years, but then as Tony and I started thinking about it more, is we run into this all the time, all the time. And what Tony said right off the rip there is exactly right. Being able to save throughout your life, has set you up in a great position to retire. But it is extremely, extremely hard to turn off the saving switch and go into the spending mode. It's just difficult. It's a generational thing, right? It's whether it's their parents from the Great Depression or Irish Catholic guilt, whatever the case may be. It's just hard for people to accept the fact that they can spend more. That max spending number that you mentioned, I run it for all of my successful plans as well. I've seen that max spend number over $100,000 a year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
And they were accustomed to spending 60 grand. I'm like,
Right.
hey, you can spend 160 grand and get away with it.
Yeah, you can increase your spending by 200% and still have a very nice working plan.
Right. And honestly, sometimes when I build the plan, like we show like ending estate value, because when we start pulling levers inside the plan and the plan is still 100%, be like, hey, I have you spending more money, you're still 100%, but yeah, your ending estate value went down.
Yep.
And then I try and explain to him, like, hey, well, Tony, I got $2 million today, and this says when I die at 95, I'm going to have like $5 or $6 million. And I'm like, yeah, it does. That's more money than you have today. And it's a combination of a few things of, underspending. But I also, there's this a silent headwind inside that plan, and it's inflation.
Right.
I don't know what $5 million looks like in 20 years. Or 30 years, depending on the runway and how old the client is when we're building the plan. But I don't know. I mean, it could be the equivalent of $2 million. Like, hey, your principal today didn't really move in future spending scenarios.
Yep, for
right?
sure.
So that's the other thing. So I would just say that if you haven't had it done, if you're working with us or you're working with another advisor, getting these simulations done is very important, because maybe it'll help you understand that if you're not retired, maybe it is time to retire.
Right.
The accounts have been, again, I mentioned this before, but accounts have been melting up, and this is, again, another episode I'd like to have is now the time to retire, right? Because even with, our current economic state, and that's maybe not like jobs and inflation and stuff, but like what our government is doing and making easy monetary policy. They're going to be cutting Fed rates soon. These are all, I guess, kindles to spark the fire of the market to continue to move forward.
Right.
So again, there are things that we can instill in a financial plan, and everyone's different, obviously, but things that we can instill so that you can experience an earlier retirement than you thought, or just a more luscious maybe retirement than you thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and if you are a client and you're listening to this, and you might think that we're talking about you, we're not. It's a very, very, very common thing. I'd say, I don't know, I have the same conversations with 8 out of 10 of my clients, perhaps 7 out of 10, something like that. But it's one thing to have the overall the overall mentality about money, and having to change that in retirement. But these reports do kind of show you the cold hard truth. It's like, you can either spend this money now, or it's going to get passed down to your children, right, or whoever your heirs are. I've been having that conversation a little bit more. I don't think it's really, moving the needle too much, but that's really what it comes down to. That you work your whole life, you do the right things, you save into various plans, you come up with a financial plan when you're 50, 55, you get it all squared away. All of that work and effort has been so you can enjoy your retirement. And we always say, the first 10 years of retirement is the best 10 years of retirement. So, if you're working with us, or you're not, if you're not, the getting a plan done for you is going to give you so much more confidence to be able to spend what you want to and enjoy the retirement that you want to.
Right. And you don't need to go like, hey, like you said, you've had scenarios where it's like, hey man, you can actually double how much you spend. I'm like, please don't do that.
Right.
Like I try and say, like, why don't you ease into it? Yeah. Right. I know I've known you for a long time. We've been working together. I know how what your thoughts are on your financial, livelihood and things like that. Like, you don't need to just take the advice and run with it. You can ease into it. Or like, hey, I want to spend an extra couple grand on this vacation. Just run it by us, man. It's like, that's all you need to do. But again, like, why would you want to do this right now? Again, accounts are up. Spend the money. Another reason, spend the money while you're still able, physically, and while the markets are all-time high. You know, the old saying, like, you know, you sell high, you buy low kind of things. Well, this is the time you would be selling high and reaping the rewards of this market melt up we've been experiencing for years. So, you know, I guess with that being said, now you can't, you know, the old saying, you can't take it with you, right? You know, you don't get a gold star for taking it with you. So, but maybe the goal is different. Maybe legacy planning is for you. It is your top priority, and that's fine too, right? So maybe another conversation I've had, more of like, hey, I want to spend all my money and, you know, bounce my last check, is like, hey, I actually want to leave behind the most amount of money. Then the conversation actually shifts a little bit and says, okay, well, who are we investing for? My kids, my grandkids.
Right.
Okay, how old are they? Because I know how old you are, and you might be 60, 70, or 80 years old. How old are they? Oh, they're 40 or 50, or they're my grandkids, they're 20. Whatever those numbers are. Like, now it's like, okay, well, if that money's for them, we should consider investing for them in the way they should.
Right.
A little bit more aggression, right? Because that's for them. And also another thing to consider, if legacy planning is important, consider gifting now. You know, building in gifting strategies inside of the portfolio. About, you know, what I think the gifting limit is $19,000 per person per year at this point. What we should maybe consider that. This way you get to actually see them enjoy it and know that it's going for a good cause. Maybe paying down debt, or going on a family vacation, or your kids helping their kids, right?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
this whatever your goal is, right? And that's actually the main point. What is the goal? All right. So a lot of different ideas and strategies that can go behind this, but if we really just take a look at how do we really want to do this, and I understand the saying, but every time I hear it, I get irritated because I don't say it, and it's like the go-go years, right? Hey, I'm retiring. It's the go-go years. That's like that 60 to 75, you know, age range. You know, we're still relatively healthy. We're active. We want to travel. We have hobbies. We have time and money to spend on them, and the health to do that. And we just want to have the camaraderie with other friends and family members, right? So then somewhere after that 75 to 85 range, we just start slowing down, right? And spending less money naturally, because we're just going on less trips, and, you know, maybe just worrying about other stuff, or watching the sunset every day. I don't know. Like, I hope I make it there, Derek. But anyway, and then once, you know, if we're all lucky enough to get past 85, you know, then there's, you know, some, you know, health issues that we should be planning for, and that's what we could be planning for today. If you're playing so healthy, you can spend more money. We can save your accounts and your family on the back end, building out long-term care strategies. Right. And but we need to do that now. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's some, you know, long-term care used to be a real bugaboo where if you don't what's the old saying? If you don't use it, you lose it. Right. It doesn't work that way. Some of the policies that we implement, it doesn't work that way. If you don't use it, the money's going somewhere else, somewhere down the road. But if you do use it, it's in your best interest, because it's going to preserve the assets down the road.
Yep, for sure.
So,
yeah, something that just popped into my mind as we're going through this, you know, the 4% rule. Right. We've done shows on basically saying, hey, you know, if you're just blindly following the 4% rule, you know, you could run out of money in retirement. Right. But at the same point in time, the people we're talking about here, if you're only spending 4%, you're probably going to end up with more than what you started with. So that is why all of this stuff is so personalized, so individualized. Like, you can't go on the internet and have AI run a report for you and tell you, like, oh, I need to be doing this, I need to be spending that. It's because it is based on your specific situation. You know, like, there are many nuances in people's lives, how people retire, you know, what they do, and that's why, you know, I think it always comes back to creating a plan for you that works for you and your lifestyle and your wishes.
Yeah. You know, it's like this this episode seems like a real like motivating, high powered thing. Like, hey, Tony and Derek said I should start making more money or spending more money. Now, the again, I'm as the optimist in me and the pessimist in me, as in engineering mindset, is like, listen, again, the markets are melting up right now, and they could for the next couple years, but we should know by just experience that the market doesn't always go up, right? And so, if we are experiencing those years, or we want to, a plan needs to be devised, I guess, built out for that scenario. Like, hey, average bear market's 3 years. If I plan on spending X for vacations and all this stuff, we can dial that money aside right now. So if there is a downturn, it's sitting in a money market that's paying 3-4% or whatever it may be right now, that it's not fluctuating with the market, and we still have access to that because we're not selling it low. Right? We wouldn't be selling assets low. We were spending a asset that's flat. Right. So again, we have to do this because that's not all puppy dogs and ice cream. It just happens to be right now. And if we do go through a downturn, okay, maybe there are a few years in that realm of travel and doing things and having fun after retirement. Maybe you have to take a year off or two if the market were to go backwards, right? And we lose some ground. But we can design strategies for that if that's the goal. Like, Tony, I don't want to miss out. I don't want to lose ground.
Right.
Okay, let's sit down and talk about it. So.
And I think we'll probably, and I can tell Tony wants to do a similar show about the planning involved in all of this. But I am a huge fan. This is kind of off topic, but as the market has melted up, like in the past, I'm a huge fan of taking some of those winnings and putting them on the sidelines in some sort of, guaranteed product where that can throw off an additional, income for you. Right. So, if you've made $100,000 in the markets and, you're in this situation where you can spend more, you can lock that 100,000 up, get a pretty good return on it, and have a predictable income every year that is just extra spending money, right? And that is just by using good planning and understanding your specific plan,
your
and
specific situation,
taking risk off the table. Again, if you go out there and you Google, annuity or CD, you might get negative results, but every product, every investment does have a specific purpose in certain people's portfolios. So it is not a one size fits all type of situation.
Yeah, but that's where we take those scenarios and we pump them into the plan and see how the plan reacts.
Yep, for sure.
Right. And again, when we build the plans, we are building, I don't want to say lower rates of return than we have, but we are. Because again, maybe we built a plan for a 5 or 6% rate of return, but you got 12.
Right.
Fantastic. Right. Things are going to be better in your plan.
Right.
But I'm always going to build a conservative rate of return. And obviously our goal is to overproduce or, overachieve that particular rate of return. And I say that to some people and I try to say it in different ways. I'm like, I'm not getting you 5 or 6%. The planning, I have to pick a percentage inside the plan, and I'm not going to give you a 12 and say, we're going to get you 12 every year. No, I want to do something more conservative and outperform.
Right, for sure.
Overachieve. So anyway, take us home, Derek.
All right, well, good stuff this week. If you guys have any questions, comments, any ideas for a show, hit us up at info@swpconnect.com.
Yep, and if you have if you have a plan or need a plan, obviously, hit us up with the info at SWP. But, building out these stress tests are very important. And we've been doing that for years and years and years on different scenarios because, everyone's different.
Yep.
Right? But that's the crux of all this. Things change, and they have been changing, with how the markets are reacting and how people are feeling about their work-life balance and things like that. So it all starts with, getting the plan dialed up and figuring out what we can do and get away with.
Yep, absolutely. We can't stress it enough. We say it pretty much every week. if it's with us or somebody else, just make sure you have a plan so your retirement years can be as fun and productive as possible.
Absolutely.
And with that, we'll talk to you guys next week.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.